Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, and also believe in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you're going. How can we know the way? Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you will know my Father also. From now on, you do know him and have seen him.
And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. This being family worship today, I've got a question for you kids. Who do you suppose is in that photograph? Oh, I heard a little older kid say Eric. Yes, now which one is Eric? I'll give you a hint, it's not the one with glasses. No, I'm the tall one in the neon orange sweater. Yeah, and that's my brother, Scott, in front of me, and my mother behind us. You know, when I was a little kid, about that age, when it came to interacting with my classmates, I swear that I and Gandhi were like one. I mean, I was the most peaceful person, nonviolent, and so forth. But when I got home with my brother, I was more closely related to Attila the Hun. and so was he, I'll tell you. We fought. We fought a lot. Any of you kids fight with your siblings, your brother or sister? My brother and I, we were always at it with each other. And that was in grade school. That continued, unfortunately. But my mom then, in response, would maybe do something that your mom or dad does. We would be put into timeout. So my brother would go in one room, I would go in another room, and we'd have to kind of cool off for a while, and then we could come out. Now that ended the fight, but it didn't end the fighting. So we really fought pretty much throughout grade school, middle school, high school. It wasn't until I left for college, and then we kind of both realized we missed each other, and we quickly realized just what idiots we were for fighting all the way through college. We actually became best friends very shortly after I left home, and have been best friends ever since. It's so when I had the opportunity to become a parent myself, I really, really prayed not to have boys. I was terrified to have boys. I seriously prayed very hard, knowing what we put my parents through growing up. And no boys, please, please. And thankfully for me, my prayers were answered with 2 girls born 2 years apart to the day, because we are impeccable planners. You're laughing again. You did that at 9 too. I mean, what? No, we had 2 girls, and in fact, people would say, "Oh, 2 girls. Oh, are you going to try for a boy next time?" Like, no, we're quitting while we're ahead. No boy, no, we got 2 girls. Yay! Now, however, I discovered that girls, their tactics may be a little bit different. But they could be just as vicious and brutal as boys. In fact, girls could be a little bit like Attila the Hun in dresses, too. So just because you're a girl doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get along. And our girls, of course, started, the little squabbling. But thankfully for me, I married up. And Melanie had a far more effective technique than my parents did. My parents would send us to separate rooms into timeout. Melanie had the genius to send both girls to the bathroom, the same bathroom, together, telling them not to come out until they were getting along. So we would kind of listen in at the door a little bit, hear this, then it would just go silent, like crickets. And then after a while, you just hear some giggle would kind of come out, and then pretty soon a torrent of laughter, and Before long, they were having such a good time in the bathroom, they didn't even want to come out. Well, you do this like a dozen times, and it kind of, the kids got the point, like we need to get along. And sure enough, they did. They became best friends back in grade school, and they've been best friends even now to this day, that they're in their upper 20s. And so, I was really happy about that. But isn't it interesting that we can, when it comes to like interacting with the outside world, like if you're at school or whatever, somebody has a different point of view, we tend to be a little bit more peaceful than we are when there's disagreements in our own families. I think it's because we have different expectations. I mean, we know that other people are very different. They come from different backgrounds, different families. They have different ideas about what they want to do and so forth. So we just kind of accept that there's going to be differences. But in our own family, we kind of expect like everybody's going to agree. We're all going to be as one. We go into apoplectic shock if one of our family members is like, oh, no, I don't want to do that, or oh, I disagree with that. Like, what? We just have this expectation that we're all supposed to be one. Well, what works in biological families, also that dynamic is present in spiritual families, or in households of faith, so to speak. I'll never forget, back in 2011, there was a popular evangelical megachurch leader named Rob Bell, who posted a 2-minute and 58-second video on YouTube, and the internet blew up. It was so controversial that within 2 hours it was the number 10 trending topic on Twitter. It was so controversial that within just a few days, 2,500 blog posts had been written about this 2-minute, 58-second video. In fact, within just a few short weeks, more had been written about Rob Bell, his video, and the book he was promoting called Love Wins than had been written about Martin Luther in the first 10 years of his nailing the 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Cathedral. What was so controversial about Rob Bell's video? Well, he dared to claim, get this, that Gandhi may not be in hell. That Gandhi may not be in hell. Among the first to raise the clarion call was another popular evangelical leader named Justin Taylor. Justin Taylor literally said, "The sky is falling." Okay, well, that's not exactly literally, but he basically foresaw a whole lot of fire and brimstone headed towards Rob Bell and his church for making that claim. Another one of the very first people to comment also was this gentleman who just tweeted a simple tweet to his 100,000 followers, which was, "Farewell, Rob Bell." Farewell, Rob Bell. Proclaiming that Gandhi may not be in hell. A lot of Christians, of course, believe that they cite the passage we just heard about Jesus. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes unto the Father except through me. And they take that to mean that only Christians get in, and everyone else is condemned to hell, to being tortured for eternity. And they some further believe that Christians who disagree with that are headed there too. They're not real Christians. They're pretend Christians, and so they will be there. Now that sounds cold-hearted, doesn't it? Seems cold-hearted. But really, beliefs are not cold-hearted or warm-hearted. Beliefs are beliefs. It's how we respond to those beliefs that betrays the temperature of our heart. And surely, a lot of us know people who believe this very strongly, who are some of the most warmest, kindest, generous-spirited people you know. So it doesn't have to do with the belief, it has to do with the person and the reaction to it. You may believe in a God I would call rather cold-hearted, but that doesn't mean that you are just because of your beliefs. It's interesting, though, because we have so much tension around difference of beliefs like that, because we are part of one Christian family. We may be conservative or liberal, but we expect, amongst Christians, we should all believe the same thing. We kind of see the person on the other side of the theological fence as like the forerunners of the zombie apocalypse. You know, they're coming. We got to hold the fort, right, lest they overrun. That's because we expect our fellow Christians to get along and to agree with one another more than we expect outsiders like those of other faiths to agree with us. Now, curiously, among the most vehement responses in that whole internet blow-up came from progressive Christians, people who were supportive of Rob Bell, but very, very, very angry at the other side. I mean, they were basically like, love wins! Go to hell yourself. Like they were just furious, and it was just really rather embarrassing how angry a good person who affirms God loves all people and you can be. Yet the very same people would also largely be very supportive of like interfaith relations, like we're doing with Christians, Jews, and Muslims, and so forth. And yet, curiously, like those of us, our Muslim friends, a great many of them believe in hell too, that God sends people there. Now, they're a little different. They don't put as many people in hell. In fact, the Quran overtly acknowledges over and over that if you are a Christian or a Jew and you are righteous and not killing Muslims, God's good with you. You have nothing to fear about hell. And they also acknowledge that hell may not be for eternity for everybody because God is compassionate, but they still, they believe in some form of torment for those who are not following what God wants, just as firmly as fundamentalist Christians. So interesting, that it's easy to embrace somebody from another faith who might believe this way, but then you're going to go on the attack with somebody within your own faith that believes this. It's because it's a different household of faith. We have different expectations. I actually wonder, as we continue on the tri-faith path, I mean, we are really in a period of great generosity of spirit. We acknowledge we have very different beliefs, and yet we still see beyond these. We have a sense, a deep intuition that somewhere out beyond our human understanding, those differences of belief are reconciled in the mystery of God. It's one of the things I love about the tri-faith, that it actually puts us right up close and personal with God's mystery, and the mystery of God's love, and the greatness, the largeness of a God who can embrace those of us who believe very different things. But I wonder, as we go along on this commons, and we begin to act and just see each other more as family, will we then gain in this idea that we must believe all the same things? Basically, will we be like my brother and I? We should all believe the same thing, or will we will God invite us to step into the theological bathroom together until we see the beauty in each other once again and see something that transcends those differences?
I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another.
So sometimes I wish that God would force or invite all of us who are in the Christian tradition into the theological equivalent of the bathroom. And we couldn't come out until we either worked through our differences or at least saw something so magnificent in each other that it transcended the differences that we have. If that would be the case, it might remind someone like me, who spends more time hanging out with people on my theological side of the fence than the other, that, oh yes, people may have this belief, but they are also, a great many of them are highly warm-hearted, generous, and kind, and we can find some common ground in that human way of behaving. And perhaps they would see something of me and others on my theological side of the fence that they hadn't seen or had forgotten, that yes, we actually do love Jesus. We actually do devote our lives to following this Jesus. And we are more than happy to share our faith with others, provided they ask us and sincerely want to. We're not going to force it on others, but they want to know, we're happy to tell them, and we're happy to tell them not because we want to save them from hellfire in eternity, but more our approach is like we are beggars who are telling a hungry person where we found food. I mean, it's that kind of sharing. Maybe we could find some common ground and beliefs if we spent a little longer in the bathroom together, theologically, so to speak. Now, if I were in that bathroom, I would want to also bring with me this. It's a piece of Mylar. You kids know what Mylar is? It's like sometimes you see it on those balloons, the helium balloons. It's a little sheet of film that's really bright reflective on both sides. They actually use these when there is an eclipse, a solar eclipse, because you can't see the sun directly, you can't look at it without going blind. And so they will put a Mylar between themselves and the sun, and you can actually look at the sun for a little while longer before you go blind. But you can actually see the sun, and you see it. You see it very much more clearly and safely with that. But before I took the Mylar out of my pocket, though, I would want to take them over to the window and just let the sun warm our faces for a little bit, and then just kind of observe, each of us is receiving the blessings of the sun's warmth, and yet God isn't saying, well, which one of you is right, which one of you is wrong, I'm going to warm one of you and not the other. That we are all actually being warmed by the same sun, regardless of our beliefs or their correct or incorrect nature. I might also observe that while we all believe that is the sun up there, if one of us or another happen to believe that that's not the sun, but it's a heat lamp instead, the sun would still be the sun, and it would still be warming us, regardless of what we believe it is up there that's doing it. Just as the sun shines on Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and Buddhists, and Hindus, and even Republicans and Democrats equally. It comes without checking your faith at the door or your beliefs at the door. It just comes. It's part, and those mere facts should give us some indication of the generosity of God, and the love of God, the compassion of God. And then I would want to take the Mylar out and explain how I could also affirm the statement of Jesus, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes out of the Father except through me. I have no understanding that only Christians can have community with God, can connect with God. But to me, Jesus is my way and my truth and my life, because Jesus is kind of like Mylar. You see, the Bible will affirm from beginning to end that God's glory is way too brilliant. It's like the sun. We cannot behold or be in the presence of God's full glory without serious consequences. That if we're going to be interacting with God, it's got to be kind of stepped down in a sense and filtered in some way. And to me, Jesus is the one who comes between me and God's glory, so that I can actually behold God's glory more clearly and more safely, quite frankly. To me, the question is not, is Jesus like God? The more important question is God like Jesus? Does his life, his death, his resurrection, his teachings, does it reveal something about who God is? And I believe he does. He shows me most clearly who God is and what's on God's mind, what God considers important. So through Jesus, I come to know that God isn't just brilliant, but also deeply compassionate. It's through Jesus I know that God isn't just way up there in the sky like the sun, but God is also up close and personal, chooses to dwell among us as well. It is through Jesus that I know that God is not only up close and personal and compassionate, but extremely loving. When I hear the commandment, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, pray for those who persecute you. Well, if this is a commandment that is reflective of God's will for us, surely God acts the same way towards God's enemies, or those who might consider themselves God's enemies. No, it is through Jesus that I can really, look at God and see, kind of trace the outlines of who God is, what God is like. And through Jesus, I discover also that God's heart, the heart of God's heart, it's not like the sun, perfectly round like this, but rather God's heart is cross-shaped. God's heart is cross-shaped, which tells me that God's heart is brimming with forgiveness, brimming with the desire to be reconciled with us, that God prefers actually relationship to perfection. And also, if the cross is a signal of the heart of God, then that also tells me that deep in the very center and ground of God's very being, God knows the pain that is just like a father losing an only son who's been tortured and killed. That degree of pain, God knows, and God even experiences with us. And yet it doesn't stop there. I know that through the empty tomb, that God is capable of taking that pain that we all experience on some level in life and transforming it into something that of the heights of human joy. That God knows the entire breadth of human experiences and experiences that with us in some way. And therefore, when we're in trouble or we are troubled and we struggle, God knows what it's like. God's been there, done that. God is capable of guiding us on a better path. I remember there was a famous theologian in the United Church of Christ named William Sloane Coffin, who once lost his son, who had driven off the road on a slippery, his car had come off the road on a slippery, frosty night and into the river. He died there, and people would ask him, Reverend Sloane Coffin, where was God when your son went off the road into the river? And he would say, well, God was in the car with my son. Because he knew a God who knows the whole range of human experiences and experiences that with us, and therefore is capable of being with us in the most deepest and intimate of ways and places and experiences. So, somebody like Gandhi, who was actually a big fan of Jesus, Gandhi once said, I love your Jesus, I'm just not so wild about his followers. But really, someone who is not of Christian faith does not need Christian faith to experience the cross-shaped warmth of God. That warmth, that compassion, that love, that desire for reconciliation, that all of that shines like the sun. And we all experience it, whether we know where it's coming from or we have precise beliefs about where it's coming from or not. We all experience it. Gandhi experiences it. Somebody who has no belief in Jesus whatsoever experiences that love, that grace, just like the sun. And then they, like us, have the opportunity to either do one of two things. Either to continue to lurk in the shadows where we find ourselves, in our own hidden darkness, where we at least feel like we're the masters of our own destiny, or to step out into the light, to continue to allow that warmth to come to us and that illumination to guide us on the next step to a more fuller experience of life and love. No, I wish that really the whole world could spend time in that theological bathroom together. Spend some time there at the invitation of God so that we could truly work out our differences, or at least see something magnificent, so magnificent in each other, that because we are all part of the image and likeness of God, that transcends our differences and maybe is even reconciled deep in the mystery of God someplace. No, I think we would all get to know God's love a lot better if we hung out together in that theological bathroom. And not only know God's love better, but maybe even reflect God's love better ourselves in loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. Amen.